Hi folks, good morning. I'm Joe Mangiacotti from the Joe Mangiacotti Show on flagship station AM 830 WCRN and affiliates, as well as live streaming on the weekend mornings. Tune in. Check us out online at tjmshow.com. Today's TOFY, that means today's observation for you, well, it has to do with the election. As the days dwindle and the corona positive tests increase, and cases, by the way, should be reserved for those that are either hospitalized or placed on ventilators, not just test positive. See, this makes no sense. It puts unnecessary panic on us. If it were to test the public's IQ on a daily basis, right, we'd have an increased number of geniuses and morons, by the way. So the spike in positive test results has driven states to bring back the shutdowns and even make it mandatory to wear masks in public. And we are seeing the requests now being made to do so in private as well. But this TOFY is not about mask wearing. Today's TOFY is about the former vice president campaigning from his basement and limiting his access to a very controlled set of circumstances. His own campaign people have told us that he is only around a couple people a day, right? His body people. Those are the campaign staffers that in his case literally tell him what he's doing, what's going on. Not so much as a courtesy reminder about his schedule, but actually tell him what he's doing, where he is going. And we've actually seen them have to tell him what he's running for. Now, the official polls and the ones regurgitated by the mainstream media day after day, they say Donald Trump is behind Joe Biden. Although this past week the gap narrowed from 10 points to 3 points, but we also know that when it comes to Trump and polls, they aren't reliable as polls have been in the past. In 2016, at this point in the campaign, Trump was trailing Hillary by serious double digits. Even on election day, even several hours after the polls closed, they told us that Hillary was going to win. This has come to be known as the silent majority. Those that are not vocal about their support for Donald Trump, they just go into the booth and pull a lever. And why would they be open about their support for the President of the United States? Bullies of the cancer culture will attack you online, in person, and behind your back. Trust me, I know this. They don't like your opinion, your choice for president. They will work to harm you. So the left has not accepted the results of the 2016 election. It was not supposed to happen that way, but it did. Hillary was supposed to be the first female president. And businesses, well, business was going to go on as usual. The donations to the Clinton Foundation dried up as soon as it was clear that Hillary was not going to be able to deliver on promises made and favors expected. These have not received the attention they should by the mainstream media because they don't do their jobs, except they think that they do their jobs because they think their jobs to further their agenda, their political leanings, and their narrative. Not report on facts and not ask questions that real journalists should ask. We also should be having presidential debate very soon. Now, the campaigns have agreed to 3 debates, and that seems very low for such an important election. It is a very important election, probably the most important election in the history of our union, certainly in our lifetimes. So why only 3? And will the Biden camp want to lessen that number? We've seen Joe on the debate stage during the primary, right? We saw him look around to see how the other candidates were going to answer before he answered. We saw him lose his place and give up the remainder of his time because he clearly lost his place and did not know where to go from the path that he wandered down. So Joe Biden's campaign did say that the presumptive Democratic nominee would commit to participating in 3 debates and quickly slammed a push by President Trump's advisors for an additional debate as an effort to change the subject. But wasn't the subject debates? The number is the only thing that's up for discussion. So I, for one, and I think you are too, looking very much to just the 2 of them, Donald J. Trump and Joe Biden, on a debate stage. Under the lights, even with the slanted and biased panel of alleged journalists monitoring and asking the questions. Most of us would pay to see this, but alas, we don't have to pay per view, just in our time and sitting through some sponsorships and those ridiculous questions we've all had to listen to in the past debates. Now, Donald Trump, his press secretary, and his surrogates have had very rude and undignified questions leveled at him. From his diet and real weight to bullying him into taking a cognitive test that no other president has taken before, right up to and including, does President Trump believe that it was a good thing that the South lost the Civil War? In race-baiting questions like, why are African Americans still dying at the hands of law enforcement in this country? The real questions that I'd like to hear asked are the ones that really matter, the ones that should be asked of a nearly 5-decade political operative who has had almost 40 years in the Senate, 8 years in the White House to address so many issues and injustices. And now he tells us that if he only gives us a chance, or we give him this chance now, here's all the answers. He'll make it all right. That he could have handled the coronavirus better. Even though the Trump administration built hospitals, converted hospital ships in record time, filled the shelves with masks, PPE, and ventilator production at warp speed, to point that we had thousands of hospital beds that sat empty for months. Sleepy Joe even tells us that he is the one that can bring the economy back. Does he think we have his memory? That we don't remember the last 4 years, that Trump cut corporate and individual taxes, cut regulations, and renegotiated trade deals that brought manufacturing and jobs back to this country? That he, Joe Biden, would raise your taxes while loading up on so many regulations and Green New Deal rules that manufacturing, job creation, even food and fuel production would come to a screeching halt. Joe has plagiarized so many times that we can't even count it. He even is borrowing from Trump when it comes to the economy now with his Made in America and Build Back Better economic plan. Seriously? We ever heard this plan before? Who really believes that? First, Joe would be in charge of his own White House? No, I don't think so. Second, everything that he has brought this country back to greatness would be completely and utterly reversed. The question I'd like those to be asked of Joe Biden if the media was doing their job, the most of us would know, or at least be reminded, that former Vice President and Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden is officially under investigation by Washington, D.C. law enforcement for his alleged sexual assault against Tara Reade, a former staffer of his campaign back in 1993. Tara Reade went forward with a criminal complaint to the police last month after revealing very disturbing details of the alleged assault on a podcast with journalist Katie Harper. Now, the media would also be asking Sleepy Joe about Burisma Holdings, his son Hunter's position with Burisma, and how he landed that incredibly lucrative job, and the salary and bonuses that went with it, as well as how a guy with no money management or track record flies to China on Air Force 2, comes home with $1.5 billion under management. That would give the typical money manager between $15 and $23 million per year. Not a one-time fee, let me remind you, that would be a yearly fee year after year. Now, the polls may show Trump trailing, and we know we can't trust them when it comes to Trump. We know that the campaign really hasn't started and won't until Joe Biden gets out among the people. But the huge difference between votes, or I should say voters, a lot of Biden voters are votes against Trump, whereas the votes for Trump are overwhelmingly for Trump. They want Trump. They're passionate. They aren't voting for him to not get the other guy. They are passionate about that vote. Even though they may not be vocal today, they will be when the time comes. And that leads to a whole other discussion on elections, election fraud, and ballot harvesting. But my friends, that is for another today's observation for you. That's not for today, so we'll save that. So I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Join in weekend mornings on flagship station AM 830 WCRN, of course live streaming on the TuneIn app anytime at tgamshow.com. And I'll see you on the radio.